Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 7. It's called Unification 1. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. I laughed a little bit in the opening because the opening tease of this episode, the cold open, was significantly shorter than most of the cold opens on this show. This show is not afraid to have a couple of scenes at the start. It's not afraid to have a whimsical sort of just slice of life scene and then a scene that sort of teases the plot of the episode. In fact,
it can be a good 5 minutes.
Yeah, if anything, that's probably the more consistent formula of all the things they do. Is they'll have like some meaningless thing on the ship with some banter, and then that'll either lead in, or it'll just be a completely separate scene that then sets up the threat or whatever. I laughed because this is one of the quickest openings they've had, because all they had to do to set up the cliffhanger was show a picture of Spock, and it was like, oh, dan dan dan. Although, actually, should mention the dedication to Gene Roddenberry, which I was not expecting because I wasn't aware, where this was. And
is this the first episode that aired after he died then, or?
Well, I don't actually know. I would suspect that it's either that or possibly they knew this was going to be an important one that tied back into original series characters, so therefore they kind of saved it for this one. I don't imagine it was that far away from this, but
it's possible you're right, though. Yeah. Without checking the dates of the two events, we couldn't be sure.
Yeah, maybe they said, "Oh, we don't want to waste this on disaster," which is a fun episode, but it's not exactly a big episode for Trek lore or Trek mythos. Whereas this two-parter feels like it's probably going to be changing some things significantly in the status quo of Trek. But yeah, so that was, that comes up first. But other than that, though, it's one quick conversation that leads to, oh yes, one of our ambassadors has been spotted on Romulus, and it's very concerning. And then the photograph clears up and it's Spock, and it's like, okay, there you go. And I immediately said to myself, all right, so we're going to see him in the final 5 seconds, and it's just mainly going to, he's technically in this episode, but it's mainly a part 2 thing,
which is fine.
Yeah, but so this episode has essentially 2 plots. One is the fact that Picard has been given the orders to go to Romulus undercover, because obviously they're not really supposed to. They're certainly meant to go through neutral zone. Never mind infiltrate Romulus itself, completely made up to look like a Romulan. So we get both Picard and Data with Romulan makeup on in the ears and all the rest of it. And then we also have a plot following Riker, who's now in command of the Enterprise, looking into some sort of weird theft conspiracy to do with it's effectively a space junkyard and a depot where weapon parts and ship parts are going, because and it's only been found out because the Ferengi ship happened to have some of this stolen property on it, and it crashed. And this Vulcan equipment sort of showed up somewhere, landed on a moon or something, and they're like, "Oh, this is weird."
Yeah.
So that leads them into that, which I'm not sure if that is going to remotely tie into anything in the main plot in part 2. I wouldn't suspect it does. Although I will say, because they track to potentially this junkyard, we have some interaction with the guy who runs that place, some of which was a little bit amusing. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, when they lie in wait and then this ship that's like here to steal stuff shows up, it's a pretty mean-looking ship with pretty high weapon capabilities, which made me think it was a bit more serious than just some cheeky Ferengi or up to no good.
Yeah, this isn't the Ferengi themselves stealing this. This is much more, I won't say important, but interesting.
Because they don't seem to recognize the design of the ship either. This seems like it might be something that is, as of yet, not interacted with the Federation, or one of the races in the that are known to the Federation have got new tech and have built a new ship, and it's completely unrecognizable. But I kind of like I wasn't sure how to feel about the guy who was running the junkyard, but I did kind of like the weird bit of like ultra self-aware thing he had when he came aboard. He was being really awkward, and he treated his work very importantly, and like wouldn't talk to Riker because he didn't have an appointment. And Riker's like, "Who does this guy think he is? We're the Federation." Basically, Riker asked Troy to talk to him, and he immediately goes, "Oh, you think that because I'm out here on my own, I probably don't see a lot of handsome women, and therefore you think I'll be more cooperative with her? Yeah, you're probably right. And it just sort of goes on with these.
It's very candid. It's like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, that'll probably work, sure. So Troy keeps him company, and that's.
She looks very bored the entire time.
Well, all he's doing is talking about stuff that he salvaged off a junk.
Was some sort of eel?
Yeah, some sort of big space eel or something.
Yeah. In a locker that he knows bad to health.
Yes, and you can go see it. He wants to show her a space eel.
Yes, that he definitely doesn't keep in his bedroom, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, forgetting the fact that it sounds like some sort of weird euphemism on its own. But that was pretty much that whole plot. There's not really much to add to it.
Kind of fun with that guy. Interesting in where it's going. I'm very curious to see whether or not it ties in, because it could go either way.
Yeah, I would say it just felt like a throwaway B plot, but the presentation of the ship itself, when we finally see it, and the sort of the menace, and obviously there's the conclusion to this part of it is that Riker, after they take a couple of hits, Riker fires a shot that's only meant to disable the weapons, which it does succeed in doing, but because the ship is carrying lots of munitions and presumably a fire's broken out somewhere in the ship just blows because it's just
internal
carrying
explosions. Yeah. So I think it was an interesting scene as well. Like, just the way it was presented with Riker, really doing his best to not fire as long as possible, and then it was like, right, okay, let's we'll fire this, aim at the weapons, just to I think just to keep them on the toes, sort of thing. Just let them know we're serious. It is in no way intended to take them out entirely.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be a kill shot, but it means it just
no.
It was kind of their own undoing that they forced their hand to fire, and then once they fired, it was their own fault. They were just filled to the brim.
He
with
did
explosives.
try to hail them multiple times. He did nothing wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically that for now. This is the weird thing with the two-parter is that you don't have the resolutions yet, so it's hard to give as much of an analysis on it beyond just sort of like what are we presented with and where do we think it's going to go.
Which I think is important to say. We've not already said yet, but the episode is very good, and I think it is the presentation that is the best, because obviously, like I say, we have no resolution to anything. It's hard to analyze the impact of anything yet, but the presentation is pretty. It's up there amongst the best episodes.
Well, I mean, of course. I mean, the main thing, the big thing, is the other plot. It's the Picard and Data going to Romulus, but even before that, Picard going to Sarek, who we knew was sick. We knew he was reaching the later years of his lifespan. The last time we saw him a couple of seasons ago, whenever that was, because we knew he was affecting the emotions of the crew on the ship.
We knew he had Vulcan Alzheimer's, basically.
Basically, yeah. And we kind of see him right at the very end of that in this episode, where he is completely gone until Picard says Spock, and he becomes lucid just for a bit, just to get enough intel out of him before he starts to go again.
He has a conversation, and then Picard does a thing where he mentions the name, and Sarek's like, "How do you know that name?" He's forgotten the rest of the conversation up to that point, and great acting. Where Patrick Stewart's face just drops. The softening realization of, oh, he's this far gone.
Yeah, and ultimately, from a plot perspective, it's all about just giving them a lead as to why Spock might have went to Romulus and where he might be or who he might be with on Romulus. That's the plot point of the scene. But what you actually remember from the scene, because that stuff's not really that interesting in the sense that it's just there to give them a direction, and that's fine.
Yeah.
The important part of the scene is Picard's reaction to his illness, but when he even can't finish to live long and prosper, he trails off and can't finish it, and Picard not only has to finish the line, but even before he says it, he can't separate his fingers to make the sign. Picard has to kind of
too much, yes,
hold his hand and sort of make it for him.
The music over this sequence might be the best music in the entire show so far. It is absolutely phenomenal. It's
a very touching scene, and it paints kind of a picture. Of course, later on in the episode, Picard gets word that he has in fact passed away. He has gone, and one of the last things he said to Picard was to tell Spock that he loves him, basically. And it's something Data asks about. He asks, they're given their long lifespans, and because they're talking about regrets and the news that he's going to have to deliver to Spock that his father's dead and what that might mean to Spock. And Data thinks, oh well, he's a Vulcan. You'll be logical and say it's the natural end of life. There's nothing to fuss over. But Picard, of course, points out that he is half human. That is important, but it is more complicated because they had all this baggage that they kind of left untouched. And Data's like, well, they had all this time. Their lifespans are longer than humans, and they never got around to it. And Data doesn't understand the idea that might just make it worse. Like, that makes it feel worse that they had all that extra time compared to a human, and they still never found the time. Yeah. So, I think what I liked about this episode, beyond just that emotional stuff and tying into Sarek and of course the tease of Spock, which is kind of a big deal, is the fact that we're at a point in the show where there's so much mythology that's built up and earned over the course of it. The casual inclusion of the Klingons in this plot is very natural and actually kind of hysterical in many ways. I cannot tell you how much I love the idea that Gowron is being a diva because now he's in charge and he wants to take credit for fixing the Klingon Civil War and ending the whole thing, that he's refusing to take Picard's calls. And when Picard finally gets through to some,
junior adjutant.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know what to tell, but it was like the rookie cadet's, assistant to the third officer, something stupid like that. And the way he just says, "Well, tell Gowron we want a favor. We need a stealth ship. We need a cloaking ship." Blah 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 blah. And he's like, "You want me to tell him?" And I was like, "Yes, tell him that he will receive our gratitude. And if he doesn't, then we'll go to another Klingon and they'll receive our gratitude instead." And Gowron, we never see him this episode. We never get to hear what he said to this, but he immediately has caved, and that ship shows up courtesy of Gowron, and it's very clear that the message got through is like, yeah, we helped you win that war, and we will be on some other Klingon side if you don't just...
Gowron's like, understood, message received.
Because Picard makes it clear, he doesn't care about credit. He can take all the credit he wants, but yeah,
he needs to give us our damn favors.
Yeah, Gowron being a diva.
And again, it's when he's on the screen and Picard's like, "Oh, I'm not dealing with this shit," and just walks around and is like, "Right, you're gonna do this my way."
It was the getting the messages from Worf, like, yeah, he's not responding, he's not taking calls, and then it's like, oh, right, try another Klingon then. And then eventually they get this guy. Like, just every step of the way, the realization that Gowron's just being a bitch, basically. Yeah. And that's all this is him throwing his weight around like he thinks he's important. And it's so in character, because you remember Gowron and go, yeah, that tracks.
Pretty much.
That's totally Gowron. And
it's great, though, isn't it?
Yeah, all of it's good. And obviously, functionally, the fact that they can call upon the Klingons for a favor like this, and we have this weird, a situation where a couple of Klingons are taking Picard and Data on their ship through the neutral zone, which is a dangerous idea in and of itself to Romulus, is a very interesting thing. But the fact that they can call upon that as a favor because of what we've done already plot wise, because of the bonds and the allegiances that were formed in the show. But on top of that, the fact that there's just so much, like, we're so familiar with some of the characters involved now that we can have all this comedy play out without ever even seeing them, without ever them getting the guest star in. And to be fair, they've already got a couple of big guest stars this episode, so I'm not going to critique them.
Like, let's not blow the budget all in one go.
But, although, is the guy that plays Gowron really that expensive? But compared to getting Leonard Nimoy on for a couple episodes? That's expensive?
No, but you've got to keep your costs down somewhere.
Yes. But hey, so no, I really liked all that stuff. Kind of like being used, well, yeah. Like having the Romulan plot that we've been building since season 1, having the Klingon stuff that we've had through Worf and all of that Civil War stuff for the last 2 seasons, and having all that come together and all sort of it's the shared universe effectively. Obviously, it's not shared because we think of shared universe now. We think of it's movies and TV shows all linking together. But no, in this show, it's a shared universe where they all coexist, and there's a knock-on effect to. Well, of course the Klingons care what the Romulans are up to, and the Romulans care about what the Klingons are up to, and they both care what the humans are up to. All of it has this knock-on cause and effect, and it feels
it's
like a world.
Proper continuity.
So, very very happy with all that. Of course, they go down to the planet. Although I also loved the Klingon captain on the ship, because before we see what they look like as Romulans, it cuts to his laughter. Maybe we do see it.
It's after.
It's after, yeah. But it just cuts to him laughing, and he's laughing at them. He doesn't even have to cut to them. You just know that's what he's laughing at.
Yeah, and even he says, "It's like, oh, you best be careful. All the Romulan ladies will be after you."
Yeah, really lick off all that paint you've got on your ears.
Yeah. Sex department did a good job.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. They have to make the Romulans anyway. It makes sense that they can do it with two of the other characters.
No, it does, but I think it's a case of just with other Romulans. A lot of them, I assume, they cast knowing they're going to be in this makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So they cast so they got the least amount of work to do a lot of the time, I assume.
Yeah. Obviously, they go down and we actually get a scene. It's actually kind of fun just cutting to Romulus and having like a scene with so the guy that Spock went to see is there.
Pardek, I think he's called.
Pardek, yeah, that sounds right. And like someone else who's in charge in Romulus is like having a talk with him, and they're like, yeah, we've heard in the back channels that Picard's on his way. He's here. He might even be disguised as one of us. So everyone keep a lookout. So we know the deck's kind of stacked against them before they even land. And then once they do, yeah, people are looking at them funny, asking them questions, and it's not very long before a couple of guards stick them up and like take them somewhere. But immediately, out walks Pardek, and he's like, we had to be, you're among friends, we had to make it look like you were being arrested, and the two guards kind of put down their weapons. And then we're looking for Spock. Where's Spock? And you hear the voice, and their cliffhanger is just Spock walking out of the shadows into the light and saying hello, and that's the end of your.
That's exactly how he says it. By the way,
that's exactly how he says it. Yes.
Yeah. It's almost a cheap ending to go, well, because it's coming the whole episode, but it still works.
It works. I think when you have someone as prominent from the original show like this, and keeping in mind as well that this is right around the same time that the 6th Star Trek movie was coming out, so there's kind of a synergy there. It's still, even though obviously he's not as young as he was in the original series, he's still the Spock that's in the movies that are still being made. It doesn't feel like he's, he's not played Spock in 30 years, so it feels a little bit different. No, this is still the Spock that people are used to right now. And so, that makes it work. I think the build feels earned when you're dealing with a character this big. I mean, obviously they do it in the movies eventually, but let's say we're going to do a time travel episode where they meet Kirk, right? It'd be fine to like end an episode with, oh, wait, that's Kirk. Shatner just showed up on an episode. That would totally also be justified.
Yeah, you get to do that every so often, if you're not doing it constantly. And to be fair to this show, it hasn't done it in a long time. The closest we've had was probably, after the first episode, the closest we've had was probably Sarek.
Yeah, and that wasn't like an end of episode cliffhanger. That was like, no, he's coming to the.
It was treated with more reverence than your average guest star, but like you say, it wasn't this big.
Yeah, it wasn't the cliffhanger. Is just his face for the first time to prove that we've got him, and that's a big deal. So, yes, and I think the word unification does imply maybe where we're going with this, and that Spock's goal with this is to actually, because he's got allegiances in the Romulan government clearly, is to build an alliance and bring the Romulans either into the Federation or build at least a more peaceful, status quo going forward.
End the, because I think technically they're still at war, right?
I don't know technically, but I mean, there's a neutral zone, which tells you all you need to know.
The state of it reminds me. I'm assuming inspired by the Korea situation where technically they are still at war. There's the the DMZ there where it's like there's no real action, right? I say but theoretically still at war. I assume this is similar, but I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, because of course the Romulans were unseen for decades and decades, and they made their big return at the end of season 1 of the show. So, I guess however you count that as, like, obviously they're still hostile towards everyone else, and they're still clearly antagonists, but
it's a pretty severe Cold War right now, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think Cold War's maybe a better, it could be ignited at any time, but it is cold. Yeah. People are probably furious that we took 30 seconds to just say Cold War, because that's clearly what it is.
No, no, because I think it's I I get the the point of that comparison, but I personally think it's seemingly, to me at least, it's less comparable than the specific Korea. So if I say Cold War, that conjures its own imagery, right? Whereas I wanted to direct specifically towards Korean War.
Sure. I realize as the DMZ. That feels weird saying it that way, DMZ.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Berlin was kind of the neutral zone, like or West Berlin specifically was kind of like a neutrally.
Kind of, yeah.
It was the closest thing that had to a neutral zone.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, anyway, regardless, interesting stuff. It definitely feels like the relationship with the Romulans is going to be changed by the end of part 2, and I don't know for sure what the extent is, because I've never seen. I mean, I've seen the next gen movies, but I don't remember if they did bring up what the status of the Romulans were in those movies. I don't remember it. That was a long time ago.
I actually know part of the status from the J.J. Abrams reboot, if anything.
Yeah, and I also don't remember. I mean, I remember what happens to Romulus in that movie, in the new timeline.
Right, and I have vague memories of Spock explaining the situation of what had happened with Romulus before that, but it's been a while since I've seen that movie.
Oh no, there's definitely Romulan stuff in the next gen movies, because Nemesis is Tom Hardy plays a Romulan, but I for the life of me, I think he was a Romulan. But anyway, for the life of me, no, he's not, because he's like a clone or something. He's like a weird clone of Picard or something like that.
What? Okay, I'm looking forward to get to these movies now, just to see whatever batshit stupid nonsense this is.
I'm sure there was Romulans in Nemesis though, but I don't remember anything about what Romulans were up to. All of it's like kind of a blur. It's all kind of a blur. Anyway,
we'll get there.
No one tell us. We'll get to the movies when we're done with the show. But yes, which hey, there you go. Unification 1. Solid first part. There's a lot to like in this episode. The Sarek scene in particular is probably the highlight. But the tease of Spock is obviously very exciting throughout, and the B plot gets interesting towards the end. It's fine and entertaining, but then gets actually interesting towards
more interesting than I had expected.
Yeah, so we'll see what the payoff is to that. So yeah, let us know what you thought of this one in the comments. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel and everything we do, other than clicking those like and subscribe buttons, which are free by the way, just hit the buttons. It's it's simple enough. If Wesley can hit buttons on the Enterprise, you can hit that like button. You're better than Wesley, or you're at least as capable as Wesley, right? I believe in you. But hit the buttons. You can also go to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. And also, if you're interested in more content, head over to Mail Fuzz Movies, the movie equivalent channel, where the sci-fi movie podcast is that I do with Tara, which is probably the most relevant thing, but there's also a horror movie podcast and some other stuff as well. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.